Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Dream Oracle for You. This is episode 14, and Biljana and I, once again, are super excited to have today's discussion and share with you all. We want to thank all of our listeners so far and our subscribers for listening and sticking with us, and I hope you enjoy today's show. Today's show, we're going to be talking about things in general that can influence your dreams and perhaps your sleep as well, which will then also affect your dreams. So, we're going to touch on foods and substances and perhaps a little discussion on mood. We don't know exactly where today's podcast is going to go. As always, we just let it flow. And with that, I'm going to ask Biljana if she has anything she'd like to say to kick things off.
Well, welcome and thank you for anyone listening. And always excited to jump on with Sarah and have a chat. So, yeah, uh, the things that we eat, things that we drink, even our thoughts, I guess. And what did you name it? You are what you eat, you are what you think, and how food and substances and mood affect your dreams. Oh, it's a massive topic. And yeah, we're definitely going to have to do an experiment for ourselves. So, because yeah, it definitely needs to be experience based with with that. And straight off the bat, I suppose, I can say like food definitely makes a huge difference with your dreams, especially if you've had a lot of like junk food, oily foods, and that sort of stuff. I know for myself, I feel like I'm just really gluggy and all that, and I feel like I dream, but they're kind of not really, I suppose, good dreams, not nightmares, but just not really helpful dreams or clear dreams. So in that sense, a diet and not having a diet, but eating the right foods is definitely important. So I suppose we'll dive into what's good in terms of food, and yeah, I'm a huge fan of like teas. I make my own herbal teas and that sort of stuff. So yeah, when we started talking about that, and I heard on a different podcast this lady, she she's a dream therapist, and yeah, she was talking about teas that she makes for people to buy to help with lucid dreaming. And I was like, oh, they got me thinking, oh, maybe I should make something for myself. So that could be something we try out ourselves and yeah, share our findings with the people listening, and yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Ah, awesome. Thank you, Biljana. You had a lot to say to kick things off. I'm glad I handed the torch to you. Uh, we'll definitely include in the show notes more information about that podcast you were listening to with the dream therapist, because I think that would be interesting for our listeners. And who knows, maybe we could solicit her to be on our podcast.
Yeah, yeah, I think she's an Australian lady too. So
Perfect. Great.
yeah,
Yeah, so I'm like kind of torn when it comes to foods and its effect on your dreaming. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Of course, when I was reading through things yesterday, the general consensus was, if it affects, actually, there's a couple of angles. Number one is 95% of serotonin in your body is produced in your GI tract. And serotonin is a precursor to melatonin, which is responsible for your sleep cycle. So if 95% of the serotonin in your body that's a precursor to your sleep important molecules located in your gut, then it would make sense that things that you eat is going to affect the GI tract and possibly affect your production of serotonin and therefore melatonin. That's like, the science, hard science, logical fact behind it. And, there's different things that affect your metabolism. If you eat too late before you go to bed, your body is going, depending on what you eat, your body's going to have to work harder to digest it, or there's so many different variables that go into it. But it still seems inconclusive to me. By the time I was done reading everything for this episode, I felt like it's all anecdotal. Like it's all, kind of it wasn't conclusive, and part of that is the limitations in research in and of itself, I would say. So there was one journal article that I was reading, the International Journal of Dream Research, and the title of that article was actually Foods and Substances Influencing Lucid Dreams. It was published in 2022 by Joshua Beal. I don't know if I pronounced that name right. But they basically got 436 participants and they just surveyed them. They just asked them questions for them related on their what they consumed, the day before they dreamt, and then they were supposed to report whether they lucid dreamed or whether they could recall their dreams and all of that. And there's a whole bunch of, details we can talk about individual um foods or substances and kind of where those things fell into. But so I took that in. I was like, okay, that's interesting. But then there's another area where it's kind of folklore. And this is coming into the mood side of things, where it's kind of passed down from generation to generation that, like, for example, cheese. Cheese is notorious for supposedly causing bad dreams. But if that's put into, your programming where you're told from your mother or your grandparents or whoever, it's like, oh, don't eat cheese before bed, you're gonna have bad dreams. Then maybe that's why you're having bad dreams is because you think you're going to have bad dreams because you've had cheese before bed, you know? Like it can be influenced that way. And as you mentioned about doing the experiment, yeah, I think that's something that you and I should definitely work on. Maybe we're taking a break over Christmas, so maybe that's something we can work on. We'll do some homework and then report back to our audience after the break. But yeah, so last night, and I'm I eat snacks before bed. I gotta stop, but I do. I enjoy, a nice cookie or a chocolate bar or something along those lines while I'm watching TV and maybe we had some cheesy popcorn last night, which was really good. And when I went to bed last night, my intent was I had my notepad and my pen next to my bed, and if I woke up from a dream, I was gonna immediately write it down, which we've talked about before that's something that I've actively wanted to start doing. And so last night was the day I jumped in and I was like, I'm going to do this. I had the most active dream state last night that I've ever had. Like I dreamt at least three different waves of dreams. Probably talk about them in future episodes. And I had lots of sugar and chocolate before bed. And I normally have sugar and chocolate before bed. So it's not like this is something new that I was trying out. This is like my normal thing. So there's some nights that I dream and there's some nights that I don't. There's some times that I remember my dreams and there's sometimes that I don't. But last night I had the intention that I was going to remember my dreams. And I was also asking for like messages or lessons to come through my dreams as well. I also specified I wanted it to be fun and easy to understand. And it was just like super active. I'm really torn. I'm like, does food have an impact or is it more on your mind? Or is it a little bit of both? I don't know. I just said a lot. I'm curious to see what your rebuttal is.
I was just so mesmerized in what you're saying. I'm like, wow, I sound so like simple-minded compared to you. You just get all these facts and stuff. Oh, that's good.
Ugh, that's why I did my research yesterday, right? This is literally me learning it yesterday and passing it on today. There's not like this was in my head all the time.
No, I agree with that. And when I think about the dreams, when I started really focusing on my dreams like last year and writing them down, the ones that were quite vivid and real messages coming through was when I was going through like a real heavy detox of like clearing out heavy metals and all this sort of stuff and getting rid of my brain fog. And was it the clearing of all of that, or was it they're eating the better food, or was it because I was living with intention? Like everything had an intention. So, you know, it's probably a combination of all these things, but we've talked about this before, like intention is key, like it's so powerful. So if like you're eating your chocolate and your snacks and all that, you're really enjoying them and you're not just kind of just gorging out there and doing it for other reasons. Like you might really love a cookie, if it's homemade, I've seen your cookies, they look so good. If only you could send them in the mail.
I can send you the recipe and maybe I'll do a YouTube video on how to make the cookies. Because
Oh, that'd
uh,
be pretty cool.
I mean this is a side, and I won't go deep into this, but there is actual chemistry behind making cookies. Every ingredient that goes in is playing a chemical role that makes cookies awesome. And there's also like I like a nice chewy, gooey chocolate chip cookie. I don't like them to be like thick and cakey. That's not my gig. And what makes a cookie cakey is if you mix the flour in too much. Because as you're mixing the flour in, you're like breaking down the gluten or something that's in the flour, and then that's causing it to be cakey. If you think like bread, I mean, bread has to, with the flour, it has to be kneaded and, mechanically manipulated a lot to make it turn into this fluffy bread. And so if if your goal is to make fluffy cookies, by all means, mix away with your flour, but the key is to mix in the flour with the minimal amount of effort as possible. Anyway, it's a little sidebar to trick to make good cookies. Where does that leave us
This will
back in
this
dreams?
will be like what's good to eat before you go to bed and how to make cookies.
Yeah, have good intentions.